Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited to have you here for today's session called CK12 Simulations and PLIX Interactives. We're coming to you live from the CK12 office in Palo Alto, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm Lindsay, a member of the CK12 team, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before I introduce you to my coworkers, Katie and Sonia, who will be demonstrating our PLIX and simulations today, I'd like to say a few things about about the Zoom platform to make sure you guys are all comfortable with the webinar. Okay, so you should be seeing two windows in your Zoom screen, one for Q&A and one for chat. In the Q&A window, this is the place where we would like you to ask any questions that you have for us. We're going to stop after each major topic to address any of the questions that you've submitted here in the Q&A window. The chat window is the place for you all to have a community conversation. We would love for you to introduce yourselves, talk about where you're from, maybe what you teach. If you have any experience with our PLIX or our simulations, please share that in the window as well throughout our presentation. Talk with each other. The thing that you guys need to know how to do, though, is that by default, the chat window is set to send your message to all panelists. And you guys want to change that so that it says all panelists and attendees. That's the only way to get everybody to see what you're typing. So make sure to change that to all panelists and attendees. Also, right now in the chat window, we're gonna put it to use here. We've created a few handouts for you that we think will be useful for you to have today. We have the CK12 Simulation and PLIX Interactives webinar summary that highlights many features embedded in our interactives, which we'll be reviewing today. So we're gonna put the link to that into the chat window now. We also have a handout called CK12 Interactives Teaching and Planning Strategies PDF. And this is gonna include some ideas that Katie and Sonia will share with you regarding how to use our interactives to enhance your curriculum. And then Sonia has presented before her simulations about how to dispel some common misconceptions in science. And this is, so we're going to give a PDF on that as well. This is just to help you guys so you don't feel like you need to be taking frantic notes or doing any screenshots as we go through today. Lastly, while we don't issues during our broadcast, trouble with your video or your sound, let us know either of these windows. So at this time, let me turn it over to my colleague Katie, who's going to begin our formal presentation.
Today, we are going to highlight 3 different types of interactives. We will scale up from the manipulatives found out throughout the new CK12 interactive FlexBooks to our diverse PLIX to the full-scale portal simulations. Interactive FlexBooks allow students to actively experiment with math concepts within the book itself. We will highlight Science and Math PLIX, which stands for Play, Learn, Interact, Explore. This tool allows users to animate ideas through simple interactions. Also, we will be discussing our science simulations, which enable learners to discover the scientific principles that govern a real-world setting in a fun and interactive way. Before we get into the core content of the webinar, we would like to find out a little bit more about your familiarity with these interactives. You'll see a poll here in a few seconds that will prompt you to respond to a question. All right, so here's our question. How familiar are you with CK12 simulations and PLIX interactives? You can select all answer choices that apply. I am new to them, I use PLIX occasionally, I use simulations occasionally, I use PLIX frequently, or I use simulations frequently. I'll pause a few seconds to let you finish answering this poll. Remember, please select all that apply to you. All right, awesome, thank you so much. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, so I think a lot of you are new to our interactives. So this is a great time for us to tell you all about them. All right, now let's move on and discuss interactives. So in this first section of the webinar, I'll introduce CK12's newest books, the interactive FlexBooks. Next, we'll talk about PLIX Interactives and PLIX Corner. Our goal is to get you ready to try interactives in your class this week. CK12 just released a new Common Core aligned FlexBooks filled with interactives. This is a section from the new Algebra 1 book. Students can read through the text, look at pictures, and manipulate graphs, figures, and equations without even having to leave the book. In this book, the interactives are designed to be an integral part of the lesson, not just supplementary. This is cutting-edge online textbook technology. All right, so interactive FlexBooks are online textbooks that are populated with digital manipulatives and PLIX interactives, which we'll go into in depth later on in this webinar. We currently have Algebra 1 and Geometry interactive books up on the site. We will be launching the Algebra 2 interactive books soon. Each curriculum is rigorous and fully aligned with Common Core state standards. Like everything at CK12, the books are totally free. So to find the books, just scroll down to the bottom of the CK12 homepage and click Common Core Math under the By CK12 title. You'll find this link at the bottom of many CK12 pages. The link takes you to a web page with this URL. So clicking Common Core Math takes you to a browse page for the interactive FlexBooks and the associated teacher guides for each course. We plan to build out more interactive FlexBooks that will go live on this page. The functionality of the interactives are tightly integrated with each course. For example, this interactive is designed for a lesson on comparing function types: linear, exponential, quadratic, and rational. The interactive FlexBooks are designed to speak to Common Core philosophy. And then again at the bottom, you can see the link. Oh, and thanks, Sonia, for sharing that. So each book comes with a teacher's guide, which offers suggestions for how and when to integrate modalities like real-world applications and PLIX into each lesson. PLIX are similar to the embedded interactives that we looked at, except that PLIX are also accessed outside of the textbook. They have more features and cover a wide breadth of math and science concepts. So let's check out PLIX. PLIX stands for Play, Learn, Interact, Explore. It's a visual learning modality that allows users to animate ideas in a concept through simple interactions. We have over 1,130 interactives that span both math and science concepts, and they can be filtered by subject, keyword, concept, or standards. Also, PLIX, like everything offered by CK12, is free to all users. You're going to hear that a lot. All you have to do is sign into CK12 to access them. Okay, so after you've opened up a PLIX, the first thing you do is read the description on the left. The description explains what the interactive is about and provides directions on how to interact with it. Next, use the interactive by following the prompt in the instructions. In the interactive, you can explore the concept. If you need to start over, there's a refresh button at the bottom that you can use. So after you've used the interactive, click the challenge button below the description. This opens up the challenge questions. The questions often build upon one another to help students reach a deeper understanding of a concept. The final question is a discussion question that you can use for a class conversation. This is a great place to think about differentiating learning by having students try the first few questions or work their way through to the higher level thinking and discussion questions. As a side note, don't worry about trying to write down all of the teaching strategies that we mentioned. A full list was posted earlier in the chat window, and we'll also send it as a follow-up to this webinar. Along the toolbar at the top of the PLIX, you'll see that there's even more features. We will discuss more of these features as we go. All right, now let's dive into a PLIX. This PLIX is about lunar phases. The description of this PLIX includes a prompt on how to interact with it. Notice that it says to drag the red point. Moving the red point changes the phases of the moon in accordance with the labels on the slider. At the top right of this PLIX is an orange button to assign it to class. You can assign PLIX to students in a CK12 class group by clicking on that button. If you want to learn more about assignments, feel free to ask us in the Q&A window. Okay, let's look at another PLIX for a second. Before we explore the PLIX itself, you can see in the top right the options to give feedback and adjust the size of the text by clicking the icons in the upper right corner of the screen. You'll notice that this PLIX is about rules for dilation, and it has the same description and prompt area, the simple interaction, and challenge questions. This PLIX uses two of the most frequently seen question types: multiple choice and select all that apply, like this one here. If students are struggling with a question, they can often find hints to help answer the questions. So there's our hints, we've got a couple. Note that if you get an answer wrong, you'll see the option to show the correct answer. Once again, this is a learning, not an assessment tool. So students will be able to get immediate feedback and guidance when they attempt a question. Students can also use the Learn More option, this little pop out, to read about the matching concept and gain a better understanding of it. Encouraging students who are struggling to access these resources is another great way to personalize and support student learning. All right, so now that you've seen two PLIX, you may be wondering where you can get your hands on them. You can access our PLIX through the website on any computer or tablet with a screen size of 9 inches or larger. You can also use the search bar to find content and modalities, including PLIX, or you could open PLIX from within any concept. You can access PLIX through the circular PLIX icon on the homepage. Alternatively, you can jump directly to the PLIX browse page using www.ck12.org/PLIX. Let's see what that looks like. Once on the browse page, you've got a few options. Remember to sign in if you haven't, and then you can choose your branches. This will help filter your PLIX according to the areas you're teaching. If you've done this and you want to update those branches, you can click on Change Branches. In addition to searching on the main site, you can search within the PLIX browse page. Here you can search for a title, concept, or even CCSS or NGSS standard. You can find PLIX in all branches of math and science. To achieve this depth of coverage, we've developed some really diverse PLIX. Some PLIX are exploratory based, while others check for student understanding. Some PLIX are abstract, and others are based in the real world. Let's dive into a few examples. All right, exploration-based PLIX. These exploration-based PLIX are sandboxes in which a student can play around and experiment with an idea. In the distance between 2 points, taxicab distance PLIX, students explore 2 different ways to find distance between 2 locations. In Ohm's law PLIX, students explore how Ohm's law affects the current in a circuit. A great teaching strategy would be to have students explore a PLIX and then share their different experiences and what they learned with each other. So in some PLIX, like these, students can get feedback to check their understanding of a concept. The structure of water PLIX allows students to rotate water molecules to form hydrogen bonds. In the law of cosines PLIX, students find the missing side lengths of triangles using law of cosines. These PLIX could be used as a review of a concept so students can see how well they understand a concept before an assessment. In many PLIX, students can manipulate graphs, diagrams, or variables. In this sine and cosine PLIX, students can explore how the values of trig functions relate to a given angle. In the refraction band gap PLIX, users change the band gap of a substance to see if a photon can fit through. As a lesson, you could have students screenshot a few different states for a graph or a set of variables and explain what changed and how the change affected the graph or situation. Some PLIX use real-world context to teach math and science concepts. In the Rainforest Map Quest PLIX, students can locate villages on a map using a scale. In the Rate of Dissolving Sugar PLIX, students observe what happens to a sugar cube in tea as the temperature changes. For these real-world PLIX, try having students brainstorm other applications of a particular concept, or even design their own PLIX to address a concept. So as we've seen throughout these PLIX, there are a number of different ways to have students work with and use PLIX. In class, as a warm-up, exit class, or to explore a concept. At home, as a homework assignment, or students can post answers to PLIX questions on CK12. To differentiate instruction using challenge questions, learn more, and explorations. To foster conversation. So the last question of each PLIX is a discussion question, and some lead to PLIX Corner. All right, so I've mentioned PLIX Corner a couple of times now. Let's talk about what it is and how to find it. The CK12 Cafe is a place where you can ask, help, and share with other users. Just click that link to Cafe at the top of the CK12 homepage to get there. We're going to enter PLIX Corner, where users answer intriguing PLIX discussion questions. Here is a great example of a discussion in the PLIX Corner. The PLIX math question of the week was from Sets and Symbols, Size of Infinite Sets, PLIX. You can assign the PLIX featured in a PLIX Corner post, have your students answer all the questions, and then join the conversation and discuss their ideas with classmates and students across the world. One of the standards of mathematical practice is construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. The PLIX Corner is a great place for students to discuss their reasoning about a topic. So each week, CK12 features one math PLIX and one science PLIX to ask questions of the week. We've been noticing more and more classes leaving answers to PLIX questions en masse, sometimes with notes of encouragement from their teacher. This was something that I suggested in the webinars over the summer, and it's really cool to see people actually doing it now. If you'd like to see a specific PLIX feature that you want your students to respond to in PLIX Corner, just let us know. On the next slide, I'll tell you how to get in touch with us. So I'd like to challenge you to get involved. Try out PLIX and the interactive FlexBooks. Share interactives that you love with your students and other teachers. Tell us at CK12 what you think by reaching out to us at Facebook, Twitter, or email the interactives team directly at interactives@ck12.org. All right, so have fun exploring our new interactives. All right, so let's see. Here's Lindsay.
So it looks like we just have one question and Q&A right now. So I would encourage all of you guys, looks like we've got a lot of conversation happening in the chat window, but our current Q&A is about PLIX's, how they work with LMSs. So I think toward the end of this broadcast, we'll probably discuss a little bit more about how to assign, how reporting works, LMSs, but in general, PLIX is not one of our resources that are easily assigned through Canvas. Oh, see here you guys, now you're with it, now you're doing this. Will the chat be emailed to us? If you're talking about the chat from this webinar, we're gonna send you a link to the video of the webinar, but the chat window is not something that's going to be messaged out to you. So if you guys need to do any screenshots or copy paste before we end the broadcast today, that's how I would suggest you handle that. So here, I'm going to kick it back over to Katie to tackle a couple of these about, again, best practices for assigning PLIX. Looks like we've got more questions about, does this work with Google Classroom? You know, I think you showed them the button earlier, but maybe we can also remind them about how it's all URL based. So let me hand it back over to Katie.
Yeah, so like Lindsay said, we can use the assign button, that big orange one at the top. You can also just pull the URL, the highlight www.ck12.org/everything else, and pop that into a document or however it is that you're sharing items with your students. Okay, so let me do a little screen share here. Okay, so for instance, let's open up a PLIX. Sets and Symbols is a good one. And we've got Here is the Assign to Class button right there. And you can type out instructions for your students. You can select and add due dates. So it's all pretty nifty. This PLIX is actually pretty cool because it's one of the ones that takes you right into PLIX Corner. I'm just going to answer a few of these questions. And here, discuss your answer in the PLIX Corner. So if this was a PLIX you wanted to assign to your class, you would be able to see how many of the questions, like whether they completed answering the questions, and then they could click this link, get into PLIX Corner, and then answer the question based on the PLIX. Here, you can then track and see who answered it. It looks like we have a nice little note from a teacher here. Another cool thing about this PLIX is that it's actually one of the PLIX that's embedded in one of our interactive FlexBooks I was telling you about. So here's some of the small embedded interactives. And then later on down at the bottom, we actually have the PLIX linked in that I just showed you. Okay, so I'm gonna unshare that.
What am I doing?
All right, I would be really interested in learning some feedback from some of you guys. If anyone has some feedback as to what they think of these books, these interactive books. They're new, and I'd love some of your thoughts. So, homeschooling mom, will this work for me? Yeah, absolutely. Everything is at your own pace. You can assign it, see what your child's needs are. We have an adaptive practice system that looks at where their strengths and challenges are, and the PLIX are inside each of the concept pages, and so your student can use PLIX to help to support their learning in any areas where they need it. Is there a PLIX for each reading article in CK12? We have PLIX not for every single read. Each read is part of a larger concept, and we do have PLIX for many concepts on CK12, but not every single one. And the books that I just showed you, the interactive FlexBooks, do have PLIX and interactives inside of the reads, but traditionally our reads don't have the interactives embedded in them. Please join us back in your Zoom window, and we had a good chat and Q&A. So as we transition to the next part of the webinar, I would like to introduce a member of our science content team, Sonia, who will be highlighting our interactive simulations.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Katie. And it's really awesome to be here today. It was cool to see in the chat all you teachers from all over the world, Istanbul and Canada, Australia, Florida. So thank you for taking the time to listen in. And I'm excited to show you all our CK12 interactive simulations, which we at CK12 lovingly refer to as Sims. So we'll go to the next slide here. And the Sims are truly a groundbreaking new type of digital learning tool, unlike anything else out there, in that they overlay scientific and mathematical principles onto a real-world setting. These Sims support inquiry-based learning and promote students to connect the often abstract STEM concepts with their everyday applications. They differ from the PLIX interactives that Katie just showed you in that they are almost a portal, pulling students into a real-world setting, allowing them to multiple ways to interact with this setting and connecting many concepts together within this one setting. But like the PLIX and all other resources on CK12, they are all free. Simply sign in to access multiple Sims or download the free app to your tablet device. And in this webinar, I will show you how to navigate the Sims browse page and then help to familiarize you with the general structure of the Sims. I'll be sure to highlight the many embedded sim features and resources and share some ideas I have for using the Sims as an instructional tool in class or at home to differentiate instruction and to dispel some common science misconceptions. My main goal, like Katie's, is that by the end of this webinar, you feel excited and equipped to use CK12 simulations in your class. Pick one sim and experiment with it, even as early as in class this week. So I'd like to just start with sharing this picture. I used to be a classroom teacher, and this is an actual picture taken of a whiteboard in my physics class about 3 years ago. I spent my entire lunch period drawing this image for my students, trying to relate the law of reflection with what they see in a mirror. I know, don't judge. Thankfully, CK12 has provided a much more compelling learning tool, and we teachers now have time to eat our lunch. This next slide here is the prom night sim, a result of the beautiful collaboration between science teachers, animators, and software developers at CK12. The prom night sim begins with an intriguing question: what size mirror do you need to see your entire body? And advances through a video explaining the basic concepts and posing further questions to get students to think about the underlying physics behind a real-world scenario. Again, this is kind of pulling students into this scene and prompting them to think about the science that applies to something that they've encountered, like looking in a mirror. Now, I often refer to the next scene as the sandbox because it's meant for users to play around and discover new things. In this interactive environment, you will always find sliders for certain physical variables and graphs or responsive animations to illustrate the relationship between these variables. Next, there will be 3 questions that can be answered by adjusting the sliders. So we call them slider-based questions. And then each simulation ends with a set of real-world examples that invite the student to think about applications of underlying concepts in different physical situations to promote their continued learning. So after taking a sneak peek at this sim, I hope you're excited to see more. There are many ways to access the Sims from within the CK12 website, including that simulations icon on the homepage. You could see it circled there. It's right next to the PLIX icon that Katie referred to earlier. Also, this web address, www.ck12.org/sims, also provides a simple shortcut for you, your students, or colleagues to get to the Sim Browse page. So if you want to post this on your class website or share with your other teachers in your department, please do. And I think they just posted it in the chat window as well. Okay. In our collection of 120 Sims, we have bobsleds, music recitals, swimming, archery, airplanes, and more. These are all real-world settings that are hard to replicate in the classroom. Our collection of Sims are currently divided into 2 branches, physics and chemistry. We are now looking at the physics tab, and the first row features 3 of my personal favorite Sims for topics commonly taught in a physics classroom around this time of year. There's the elevator sim on the left, which allows students to explore Newton's first and second laws. The horse and cart sim in the middle that poses the classic physics question: if the cart and horse pull on each other with equal force, how can they move? I think I even had that question in my high school physics final. And then on the right, the pirate ship sim, which illustrates all of the forces acting on an object through interaction diagrams and free body diagrams and highlights Newton's third law pairs. Like I said before, these are all scenarios that are really hard to replicate in the classroom. Although these Sims are formally labeled physics, their topical coverage is broad, and we do have Sims that relate to concepts regarding physical science, earth science, astronomy, and math. Even if you're not a physics teacher, I encourage you to visit the CK12 Sims Browse page, and I'm confident you can find something for your course and level. Okay, Just to convince you, I'd like to highlight a few sims that could even be used to teach some important math concepts. There's the water fountain sim that has to do with projectile motion and involves parametric equations. The driverless car sim is a really fun way for students to learn about vector addition. There's the stadium wave sim that can be used for a more complicated sinusoid problem. And the at the crossroads sim can be used to teach conversions of systems of measurement. Like I said earlier, although these sims are just labeled physics or chemistry, there are many that can be used to highlight real-world applications connected to a variety of STEM concepts. So going back to our sim browse page, I'm going to highlight that second tab for the chemistry simulations, which gives you access to our 13 released chemistry sims. Now these sims are still in the beta stage of development, so you'll see the beginning of the full structure that you see for the physics sims. These chemistry simulations all provide the microscopic explanations for macroscopic observations of the world around us, which I know is a main goal for all you awesome chemistry teachers out there. The first three you are looking at here are the going fishing sim on the left, which students can use to explore what makes an object float or sink. The crash sim, which allows students to investigate the chemical reactions that cause an airbag to inflate. And the hot pack cold pack sim, which provides a great everyday model for students to associate with exothermic and endothermic reactions. I hope you will explore and experiment with using these new sims in your classroom, and please provide us with your feedback. I read it every week. There is a link within each sim that says feedback, so click on it and let me know what you think, or you can email interactives@ck12.org. Another exciting announcement is that we offer a free CK12 Physics Simulations app for your iOS and Android tablet devices. By clicking on either of these two icons in the Sim Browse page, you and your students can easily download the app for free at the App Store or Google Play Store today. And I'd like to highlight a few things about the app. It is only for tablet devices, so all of our sims, whether accessed online or via the app, require a 9-inch screen or larger just to be able to view all the sliders and graphs within the sim. The exciting thing about the app is that it allows you and your students to download individual sims to your tablet device for offline use. So say goodbye to wasting precious class time loading software or guiding students through multiple clicks just to access the simulation. All of our CK12 sims are HTML5 based and can be launched on our website or via the app with just one click. Imagine this. Simple homework assignment involves asking your students to download a particular sim to their tablet device so that when prompted the next day in class, they can all launch the sim quickly and easily on their tablets without any threat of Wi-Fi or loading issues interrupting the lesson. I know, sounds amazing. The CK12 team has worked really hard to ensure that you never lose a learning moment in your classroom. So I hope you download the app and explore after this webinar. Let me know how it goes. Now, there are many ways to use the Sims Browse page to find a sim for your particular class. You can either scroll down, you can type keywords into that search bar that's highlighted, or you can sift through the filters on the left. Now, you can filter the sims by concept or NGSS standard. These concepts and standards are also listed under each simulation. In addition, there is a worksheet link under each sim. You can see it highlighted there. When you click on the worksheet arrow, a worksheet version of the sim pops up that can be easily downloaded as a PDF. Now, there are a variety of ways in which these worksheets can be used, but I think it's most important to note that all of the embedded features that I'll show you today and all of the content that's in the sims are accessible in worksheet format. So if internet is an issue at your school, or you'd like a handout that will help guide students in using the sims, or even if your students just respond better to turning something in, these worksheet resources are currently available for all physics sims, and the chem sim worksheets will be coming down the road. All right, so this next slide shows images of the 4 main windows in our ramp and piano sim, which has to do with force, distance, and work, and how this relationship can be manipulated with a ramp. One of the most unique things about our simulations is their consistent structure. All 120 begin with an introductory video, and then they move on to an interactive sandbox, and many have slider-based questions. Then they all end with other real-world examples. You will find that after using 1 or 2 sims, your students will no longer have to focus their attention on how to use the digital tool, and will be able to focus on learning the concepts, which is much more important in my personal view. All right, so this is a snapshot of that introductory video of the hot oven sim, which enables students to explore the difference between heat, temperature, and thermal energy. Like all sim intro videos, the font size can be changed. You can play or pause the video at any time. And for repeat users of the sim, the video can also be skipped. Now, I might project this question on the screen in my classroom and prompt students to complete a quick write warm-up activity, asking students to put their pen to paper for 3 minutes and write whatever comes to mind in response to this question. Then I would press play and walk students through the introductory video and pause to promote a discussion format. This next slide shows the interactive sandbox environment of the cliff diver sim that allows students to explore the acceleration due to gravity. In every interactive sandbox, you'll almost always see 1 or 2 graphs at the top representing the situation, as well as sliders that allow you to manipulate those basic parameters, and a play button. Each slider has an information tag that can be activated to learn more. The graphs have many features activated by the gear symbol. Users can get info about the graph, zoom in to see the graph more clearly, hide the graphs, or compare 2 trials by clicking on Enable Last Run. You can see what that looks like right there. Now, I think it would be a great exercise to project the sandbox on a screen in class. And then I would hide the graphs by clicking on that gear symbol. I would prompt students to sketch their predictions regarding what the graphs might look like on whiteboards. And then I would drop the graphs down in a great reveal and have a class discussion about the results. I hope you try that one out. I think it'd be fun. All right, now the information bar at the top of every sandbox can be used to differentiate instruction for your students. So for students who are stuck or need more help, there is a tab labeled Tutorial, which opens a 3-minute YouTube video screencast that carefully details how the simulation works, made by yours truly. In addition, there is always a link available to concepts that highlight the relevant material in the CK12 website, like reads and videos. For students who are up for a challenge, the Challenge Me questions provide a few related, deep thinking, open-ended questions. In this one interactive environment, students who are struggling are supported, students who are ready to move on are challenged, and all students are prompted to be curious and have fun. Following the interactive sandbox, there are often slider-based questions. This is the sprinter sim, and it allows students to explore friction by investigating why sprinters wear spiked shoes for running. You receive immediate feedback on your submission of these 3 questions, and there's a way to create new slider-based questions. You can see there the plus button. So you, as the instructor, can tailor the sim to your specific course or level. I could envision prompting students to answer the slider-based questions in pairs during class. I could also see the completion of slider-based questions as a great homework assignment. They are included in the sim worksheet with sufficient space below each question to provide room for students to record their answers and reasoning. This is a snapshot of the real-world examples at the end of the Gone Fishing chemistry sim about density and floating. I think it would be fun to prompt students to do further research on one of these examples for homework and share their findings with their classmates the next class period. I would say something like, pick one real-world example that interests you, do some research on it, and bring some fun facts to share with your classmates tomorrow. You can also customize the simulations by adding more real-world examples. Another idea would be to prompt students to create their own example and upload it here, adding to our bank of community-contributed content. I introduced this idea in our last webinars, as Katie mentioned, over the summer, and I'm excited to announce a few teachers took me up on it. And so if you click on the community-contributed content of this Gone Fishing sim, you will see that there are now over 25 examples that seem to be student-generated. I think students would just get a thrill out of seeing their work displayed like this. I hope you will try it out. So as you all know, it's been a really exciting time to be a science teacher, and I want to highlight that we do have a lot of sims that can connect to current events, such as this black hole sim, that can be used when discussing the recent Nobel Prize in Physics that was awarded for the discovery of gravitational waves generated by two black holes, or even to discuss the difference between black holes and neutron stars, as just last week scientists detected gravitational waves generated by two neutron stars. This sim is beautiful, and I believe it really fosters student interest in modern science. And also definitely follow us on Twitter or Facebook. I think we'll post the links in the chat window, and they're found on our site in all of our emails. We often use these social media platforms to provide you with CK12 content that relates to current events. So I'm going to end my part of the presentation with my favorite slide. It always seems to get you science teachers pumped up. This chart highlights some of the most common science misconceptions and the related sim we hope you can use to dispel it. And there was a link posted in the chat window at the beginning, and I think we'll email it to you also as a follow-up, and it has a PDF version of this screen for your future reference. There are some great examples of misconceptions here. The idea that particles of solid have no motion. We have a few sims that address this. One, Expand and Contract, it has the Golden Gate Bridge, and it shows, even though it looks solid, if you zoom in, the molecules of the bridge are actually jiggling. And there's also a sim, I might try to go live on the site if there's some time at the end here, called States of Matter. And it allows you to see water as solid, liquid, or gas form, but it really highlights that in solid form, there's still motion there. As a physics teacher, right, one of the deepest misconceptions is mass and weight are the same thing. We have an awesome sim called Astronaut Training Chamber, and it allows students to move to various places in our solar system, you know, the moon, the Mars, even Saturn's moon, Dione, and you can observe how the mass stays the same, but the weight differs. And that third misconception, right, that gravitational force is the strongest force in nature. We have an awesome sim called Portrait Gallery, and I think it would be fun to start a class discussion using this sim. If gravity is so strong, how does a picture remain hanging on a wall in static equilibrium? So I'll be sure to kind of hopefully hop on and show you these sims so you have kind of some visuals to associate with the text here. And that concludes my part of the Sims Interactives. And here's a review of everything we just covered regarding the simulations. I really hope you'll sign up, sign in, download the free app, explore and experiment with using the Sims in your class or at home, even this week, maybe even tomorrow. As you know, just because you are all amazing teachers, there is no better way to learn than to just jump in and try it out. And I'll hand it over to Lindsay.
Actually, I think I'm going to take over for a sec. Sonia, thank you so much. We're going to see what questions we have. You guys are welcome to kind of pop those questions in our Q&A as we go through. And I know maybe, Sonia, if you're willing to share your screen, we had questions about Google Classroom integration beforehand. So maybe you could pull up a sim and show kind of similarly to simulations or PLIX, kind of how you could share that within Google Classroom at this time.
All right, let's see here. So is this what you're talking, or can you see my screen? Not yet.
Nope, just switch your share and then it'll go over to that.
Okay. How's this?
Great.
Okay, cool. So you're talking about the share right here.
Yep.
Okay, so just to be clear of kind of what Katie is saying, so I'm in a sim. I think this sim is the States of Matter sim that I kind of just described. And the information bar at the top of every sim and PLIX has a few options that you can depend on. So no matter what sim you're in, you'll be able to assign it to class through your CK12 class groups. Concepts, feedback, and then this little green plane at CK12, we call this the Sharo plane. And the idea is when you click on it, it provides a lot of ways to share the sims. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking, oh, I know of a teacher that would love this sim, or I want to share this with my class, go to our, make your way to a simulation, click on that Sharo plane, and then you can share on Google Classroom, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or you can just simply email and separate multiple emails by a comma bar and send. So that's a really easy way to share the simulation.
Thanks. We had a teacher that just asked a question about kind of not sure what to do with Sims, and really happy to get the idea of this as a warm-up in class or something like that, as opposed to assigned to each student. Can you talk about maybe some of your experience working with teachers and some, it sounds like they've done it in both of those situations, either as a whole class or per student?
No, I think this is great. Okay, I actually have a fun one here. So here's the astronaut training chamber sim. I referred to it, kind of gets that misconception that mass and weight are the same thing. So option one, I think this opening question, I could start class with this and have students just like, let's have a class discussion. How much weight could you lift on the moon? And have them just shout out numbers and discuss. And oftentimes students in kilograms, they have no idea, like how much is 100 kilograms in pounds? Like, can you lift 100 kilograms? Can you not? So this idea of mass and weight, and then how we use force to lift something, right? So just this opening question provides a great class prompt that gets to a lot of important concepts. Now, one idea I have too is like, let's say you have a teacher conference coming up, or you need a day off, you need a sub lesson plan. One thing I like to say is a simulation is really a class lesson in one package. So what I would do is I would print out the worksheets for my students. I would assign, let's say, this sim. And then I would prompt students to start by watching, if we make our way into the Sandbox, that tutorial video. So here you can see is the 3-minute YouTube video, and I'll even play it for you. It's about 2 minutes, this one. And it just does a nice job of, I'll show you. Hey, there's Katie's voice. It kind of walks you through the sim, how to use the sliders, and gives you some context and kind of highlights some concepts. So now the students are more familiar with how to use the sim. You're not even in class teaching about it. Right here, the screencast helps. Then, like I said, in the worksheet format, everything in the sim is available. So there's a blank graph. All of these challenge me questions are available in the worksheet with space underneath. So I would just prompt students to work through the challenge me questions, the slider-based questions here. There's 3 written by us. There's 1 written by someone else. So answer these 3 questions in their worksheet. And then maybe I would say, if you have time, pick one real-world example that interests you, do some research, and jot down your findings on the worksheet. By the end of class, they turn that in, and you have a really nice lesson all ready for you. So that's one idea I have. Another idea for in class regarding this, one thing I want to just kind of like really focus on is that all of our simulations are mathematically accurate. So you can actually use all these numbers and they will give you mathematically accurate answers. And so for instance, in this case, if you wanted to use this sim to derive the gravitational constant on Earth, you could actually do that, and it would come out, your findings would come out to 9.8 newtons per kilogram. So for instance, I know in modeling classrooms, a lot of times there's a lab where you have a variety of masses, you measure the force, and then for instance, you derive the slope of the line, right? And in this case, the slope of a force versus mass graph is the gravitational constant on that planet or moon. So in this case, if you, plugged it into y equals mx plus b, so the y being 1,000, the x being 100, the slope would be 10, which is about, 9.8, the gravitational constant on Earth. Now, if you move to the moon, you have the astronaut pick it up, and you can actually see that the number on the graph will change, it responds. And let me just use that zoom key to show you. I can kind of zoom in and see, and the students can use this to actually calculate that gravitational constant on the moon, or like I said, even Mars. So everything in our sims can actually be used to like plug and chug. You don't have to derive the equations if you just want to give them F equals mg, right? And they can use the variables. That's another idea. And lastly, one idea I had was about hiding the graphs. So for instance, you can say, all right, the astronaut's going to lift 500 kilograms on Mars, right? And let them see what the graph looks like. Okay, so here's 500 kilograms on Mars. And then I would maybe hide the graph, and I would say, okay, let's move to Saturn's moon, Dione. Now, do you think that the slope of the line is going to be greater or less than? And you can have them, sketch their predictions, and then you play the simulation. And you can then click here, drop the graph down, and you can see it's smaller. If you forgot what the last line looked like, you hit that enable last run, and now I see what the Mars line looks like and what Dione looks like, and I can see that the Mars slope is greater, so the gravitational constant must be greater. So again, these are just some ideas of how you can use our graph sliders for in-class activities. I do see a question there about the worksheet. Should I go through that, Katie?
Yeah, Sonia, can you maybe do that one, and then we'll wrap up the core content for this webinar?
Of course, yes, sorry. Okay, so right here, I'm back on the Sims browse page. Here's my astronaut training chamber sim I just showed in detail. You can see right here on the bottom, if you click on that arrow right here, what's going to happen is there's a PDF worksheet of the sim, and it has like a little shortcut link for your students. Here's that big question. Here's the entire script, and then the sliders, a blank graph, so they can do their sketches right there. And then some of the slider-based questions with space to answer, and challenge me questions with space, and then here are those real-world examples.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, I'm actually going to steal the screen back here. As we're approaching the hour mark, that's usually when we would like to give you just some general information that applies to everyone. And then we always stay on after. So even after I do some wrap-up information here, as you're still coming up with questions, please type them in the Q&A window. Katie's here to talk about PLIX. Sonia's here to talk about Sims. We've got the other Katie. We've got two Katies on the line to answer all the questions. So keep typing them as you guys come up with some. But let me bring my presentation back up here. And wanted to show you a few things. This presentation has been about PLIX and simulations, but these are just a few of the resources CK12 has to offer. So we recently designed this new overview page. So if you go to ck12.org/overview, you're going to see the heart of our resources. So if you need to learn a little bit about FlexBook digital textbooks, or about our philosophy on concept-based learning, we have information on our adaptive practice system. Some of you guys were asking about learning management systems, and there's a link to that as well, and our cafe. So I encourage you to look at the overview. Those plus signs expand to give you a lot of resources, and the videos are actually a couple minutes of teachers and administrators and students talking about CK12 resources. We've mentioned the cafe throughout the presentation today. Katie showed you how to get involved with the PLIX Corner, and I want to encourage you guys all to join the Jumpstart for Educators Cafe. This is where we're trying to get teachers to network with each other, to share ideas, to ask questions. So not as much for students to interact, but Jumpstart for Educators, and even state-specific Jumpstart for Educator forums for you to get involved with the CK12 team, and like I said, other educators in your area. So we have some additional webinars coming up this month. Please keep an eye out for all of our webinars. We have the two that are currently advertised are Groups in Practice 101, which is happening on November 15th. And so you guys who are asking about assignments or maybe are curious about how you can do more with getting CK-12 resources in the hands of students, you want to see what our reporting system looks like, Groups in Practice 101 is the best place to start for that. And then on November 30th, we're doing an Everything CK-12 webinar, which we do about once a month, which is for folks who need just an overview of all of our resources. So this one was specific to our interactives, but if you want an overview of the rest of the site, join us for Everything CK-12. You may have heard that we ran a certified educator program this past summer. It was a 4-week program that took the major components of CK-12 and we went really in depth. This is currently just a summer program that we're doing, but the session that you guys attended today on simulations in PLIX is one that we will probably offer again this summer in our certified educator program. So if you're interested in getting a jump start on your certification for this summer, if you think that, hey, maybe once we launch this program, you might want to be involved, shoot us an email at jumpstart@ck12.org. There is an assignment that goes with this webinar that you could fill out and kind of lock in your attendance in this webinar and your assignment to count for the summer's credit, if that makes sense. We didn't want to overwhelm people who wouldn't be interested in becoming a CK-12 certified educator by, going in depth about the assignment right now. But if you're curious about what I just said, just shoot us a quick email to jumpstart@ck12.org and we'll send you more information about that. So as always, we would love some feedback on this webinar. I'm sorry, it was a little glitchier at the beginning with audio. I think we had a microphone issue. I don't know. I apologize for the rough start. We'll do better next time. But our content of what we shared with you guys today, it's always helpful if you go to this tinyurl.com and fill out this feedback. We read it all and we try to continue to adapt our webinars to give you what you're needing to help you as you're working with students. And then, yeah, thank you. You are supported. Our support team is very responsive. We get you help. And then our social networks, Facebook and Twitter are probably our most active. Join at CK12 Foundation, like our pages, and get involved in the conversation. So that does it for my end of it. Like I said, we're gonna stay on. So if you guys need to head out, thank you for joining us today. Go ahead and sign off this webinar. But our team is still here if you would like to continue to ask questions through Q&A. I see a lot of you putting in the chat window. Thank you. No, thank you guys for joining us today. We're so glad that you were here. We'll wait just another few seconds here if anybody else has a Q&A question for us before we sign out. Okay, so here's a couple. Will you send us a certificate for this webinar? Yes, a lot of people like documentation of their attendance in webinars to turn into your school or district. If you send an email to jumpstart@ck12.org and just give us your name and that you were in attendance and that you want a certificate, we will generate one for you and get it emailed to you so you can turn it in. Okay, so Sonia, here's a Sims question for you. You did not answer how to assign Sims to a class. Do you want to take back over the screen and maybe talk through a couple of options with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Sorry about that. Okay, so why don't maybe I'll go into the elevator sim, that's okay with you guys. So I'm gonna click on that first sim on the Physics Sims browse page. And if you'd like to assign it to a class, there's this orange option in the information bar at the top of every sim and PLIX, and it reflects the assign to class option throughout our resources on the CK12 website. So if I click there, as Katie kind of briefly previewed in the PLIX, it looks very similar. So instructions, please complete all the challenge me questions for homework or something like that. And then you have already, assuming you've already set up your classes on CK12 groups, I could assign to your classroom. And then you pick a date where it's due. Let's say I want them done tomorrow. And then I can assign to class or classes if you'd like more. And that is that. Now, one thing to notice is it's not going to give you like a percentage complete. It just measures if the students go through the sim to the Sandbox, and I believe spend some time in the Sandbox, it'll give a check mark that they've completed it. So it's not like it does not assess if the students answer, let's say this, if there were, this one doesn't have slider-based questions, but the challenge me questions or the slider-based questions, it just kind of assesses if they went into the sim and spent some time in the interactive Sandbox. Let me know if that answered your question.
Okay, we're waiting to see if there's any further clarification needed on that, or still have time to answer more questions if you guys have them.
Yeah, I can just quickly, I just want to, we're here. I'll show you this awesome sim that I love. I saw a lot of physics and chemistry teachers on, so I love this question. If ice, water, and steam are all made of H2O molecules, then what makes them so different? This really stumps students, right? They're made of the same thing. How can they be so different? And it plops you right into the interactive Sandbox, and it has a really simple way of interacting, but I love it. Like just this picture here, the solid molecules are jiggling. It's just this beautiful way that I know all chemistry teachers want their students to view the world, right? If they can get their students to view a glass of ice like this with particles jiggling, they've done their job. So I think this is a great simulation to help support you teachers out there in doing the important work you do. So this is just kind of a preview of the solid state of water. And then you can go into the liquid state, and now you see that these H2O molecules have more energy, but again, they're the same molecule. They take up more space, and this is just a beautiful way for your students to view water, right? You're just changing the way that they see the world around them and overlaying science onto something as common as a glass of water. And then we have the gas, and the idea is that there's much more energy and we're just bouncing all around, and if possible they will escape and they don't take the shape of the container. So this is just like one of my favorite sims. I hope all you chemistry teachers out there are smiling and try this out tomorrow. I think that your students will really enjoy.
I think on that note, we're going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see all of you on a future webinar. Happy exploring. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.